You bake with it. You drop it in the fridge and forget about it for months. You brush your teeth with it. And when a grease fire flares up on the stove, you reach for it without thinking twice. One white powder. Four completely different jobs. But baking soda is hiding two secrets that most people never stop to question. Today, we uncover both. Welcome to Everyday Secrets, where ordinary things reveal extraordinary histories. Most people think baking soda is what makes things rise. That's what every recipe implies. Add it to the batter, put it in the oven, something light and fluffy comes out. Simple, logical, almost obvious. But that explanation is barely half the story, and the half that's missing changes everything. On its own, baking soda does absolutely nothing. Drop it into a batter without the right ingredient alongside it, and it just sits there, inert, invisible, useless. What baking soda actually needs is an acid. Any acid. Buttermilk, lemon juice, vinegar, even dark chocolate. The moment sodium bicarbonate meets an acid, a reaction fires instantly. Carbon dioxide floods through the dough in millions of tiny bubbles. Those bubbles get locked in place as the heat sets the structure around them. What you pull from the oven is light, airy, and risen, not because of the baking soda alone, but because of the collision between the baking soda and the acid. Without that acid, the baking soda doesn't stay neutral. It breaks down under heat and leaves behind a soapy, metallic bitterness that no amount of frosting can cover. The story behind it doesn't start in a kitchen. It starts in a desert 5,000 years ago. Ancient Egyptians were harvesting a mineral called natron from the desert floor. They used it to clean wounds, to produce glass, and to wash linen. But its most striking use was in preparing the dead. A body left in Egypt's heat begins to decay within days. Natron, packed around a corpse, pulled every trace of moisture from the tissue in 40 days. Bacteria cannot survive without water. Decay stops completely. Some of those bodies are still recognizable today, 3,000 years later. And that mineral they scraped from a dried-up lake? It contains sodium bicarbonate. The same molecule, the same chemistry, just found in desert rock instead of a factory. It wasn't until around 1800 that a Berlin pharmacist named Valentin Rose managed to isolate the compound in its pure form and identify exactly what it was. A few decades later, in 1846, two Americans turned that knowledge into industry, opening the first factory dedicated to producing it at scale for everyday household use. Within a generation, the white powder moved from scientific curiosity to kitchen staple. Here's what nobody tells you about where it actually comes from today. Most baking soda doesn't start in a laboratory. It starts as trona, a mineral that crystallized at the bottom of an inland sea in Wyoming roughly 50 million years ago. When that sea evaporated, it left behind compressed layers of sodium bicarbonate buried under hundreds of meters of rock. Today, miners descend 1,500 feet underground to reach it, cutting through tunnels that stretch for miles in every direction beneath the high desert. A single deposit in Wyoming supplies the vast majority of North America's entire output. Every box of baking soda on the continent began as rock from a prehistoric sea. And here is the detail that surprises almost everyone. The mineral the Egyptians called natron, used 5,000 years ago to preserve their dead, is the direct root of the Latin word natrium, which became the chemical symbol for sodium, Na. Every time you read the word sodium on an ingredient label anywhere in the world, you are reading a word that traces directly back to an Egyptian mineral scraped from a dried lake bed. But that is not the only secret hiding in the box. Because baking soda has a second life, one that has nothing to do with your kitchen and one that leads somewhere most people would never expect. Baking soda looks harmless. It costs almost nothing. It sits next to the flour on the shelf without demanding any attention. But it carries a second name that appears in hospital charts around the world: sodium bicarbonate. And in emergency medicine, it is anything but a pantry staple. When the heart stops and acid floods the bloodstream during cardiac arrest, medical teams sometimes administer sodium bicarbonate intravenously, the same compound injected directly into the vein to stabilize blood chemistry and hold open a window for resuscitation. This is not a folk remedy. It is a drug used in some of the most critical moments in modern medicine. Here is where the story flips. In the 1940s, the scientists working on the Manhattan Project, the classified program that produced the world's first nuclear weapons, discovered that workers handling uranium were absorbing toxic levels of radiation into their kidneys. The solution they reached for was sodium bicarbonate. Dissolved in water and given to exposed workers, it bound to uranium compounds in the body and helped clear them before permanent damage could set in. The most secret weapons program in history was protected in part by the same white powder used to make birthday cakes. Decades later, the same compound appeared in sports medicine. Athletes began dissolving it in water before high-intensity competition to buffer the lactic acid that accumulates in muscles under strain, holding off the burn for minutes that, in competition, can be the entire margin. Then, in 2009, a clinical study tracked patients with advanced chronic kidney disease over 2 years. One group received a small daily dose of sodium bicarbonate alongside standard care. The other received standard care alone. The rate of rapid kidney decline in the baking soda group dropped from 45% to 9%. For those patients, that difference meant the gap between a functioning life and dialysis. And the strongest twist came in 2017, when researchers published findings showing that sodium bicarbonate can alter the way bacteria respond to antibiotics, making resistant strains significantly more vulnerable to treatment. Antibiotic resistance is already one of the defining medical emergencies of this century. And one of the compounds now being studied as a tool to fight it costs under €1 and has been sitting in most people's kitchens for generations. That is what makes baking soda different from nearly everything else on that shelf. Most products are engineered for a single purpose, refined over years to solve one specific problem. Baking soda was never engineered at all. It was pulled from the ground, first by Egyptians who didn't know what it was, then by chemists who gave it a name, then by miners drilling down into a prehistoric seabed. Medicine didn't create it. Medicine kept discovering it was already there. So the next time you reach for that white powder to bake a cake, you're not reaching for a baking ingredient. You're holding a molecule that preserved pharaohs, shielded nuclear scientists, and is now being studied in laboratories working on one of medicine's hardest unsolved problems. All of that in the same white powder, the same simple box, hidden in plain sight. Which of the two surprised you more, the pharaohs or the atomic bomb? Let us know in the comments. Share it with someone who thinks baking soda is just for baking. And subscribe to Everyday Secrets for more hidden stories behind the things you've never thought to question. Because the most ordinary objects always have the most extraordinary histories.